Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Spiritual, Sexual, Shamanic Podcast. This is Usha Rose, and I am so honored to be with my dear friend and colleague, Aya Kamānakai. Welcome, Aya.
Aloha. Thank you for having me. So happy to be here.
Aya is joining us from Hawaii, a home that I know she loves and shares so much about, always inviting me to come and visit. And Aya and I have known each other for quite a few years now, and we've been in many ISTA containers and have traveled the world and played in Spain and Costa Rica. And I'm going to share a little bit about Aya, who is a faculty with ISTA and a shamanic womb graduate with Janine Marie. Aya calls us to remember the ancient wisdom and awaken the intelligence stored inside our bodies. She passionately calls beings to embrace their pleasure and reclaim their sexual energy as a life force to create the life of their dreams. Combining embodied movement, somatic expression, and vocal empowerment, Aya guides journeys of self-exploration, Reimagine Mystery School, where we learn from the wild, the wisdom in our bodies, and the vastness of our inner knowing. Such a beautiful insight into your offerings, your wisdom. And today we're going to be talking about sex magic, which is something I also really love. And I know this is a big passion of yours. And I know you've had some really intimate personal experiences with sex magic in your life. So I'd love it if you wanted to just start us off there and sharing a little bit about what has been your personal experience with sex magic and why is it so important to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Usha. So I love talking about sex magic because it's been such a powerful force in my life, right? So, to give you a little bit of background about me, I grew up in the church in Christianity, really deep in it. You know, I grew up with so much shame and fear around my sexuality. Like, I remember in college, I was taught that masturbation is like having sex with Satan. So, if you can imagine, even like anytime I would touch myself, so much guilt, so much shame, I'd have to like confess it to my sisters at the church. And it was a lot of baggage and constriction around my sexuality, you know? So much so that even after I left the church, I found myself in my mid to late 20s, completely disconnected from my body, really numb during lovemaking. And even the thought of talking about sex was like very like, "Ugh," like, I don't know how to do this. I felt like a little kid really in that regard. And so I found myself in this beautiful, loving relationship with a man that I thought I was going to marry, and we were never making love. And so much of it had to do with my stuff, my body shutting down, my emotions shutting down. And it just got worse and worse and worse and worse until finally I was like, I need to do something about this. And at that time, I kind of had resigned myself to like, maybe this is just my sexual experience in this lifetime. Maybe I'm never going to have an orgasm. Maybe I'm always going to feel disconnected. Maybe this is just all there is. But things just kept getting worse and worse and worse in that one area until I got desperate enough to take action. And so after lots and lots of research, because back then this was way before I took my first ISTA training, still like just maybe less than 5 years out of the church kind of deal. And when I started looking for how do I heal my sexuality, I didn't even know like what to do. What do you type into Google to figure that out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I landed on was sexual bodywork. And when I first read about it, I was like, no fucking way, that's prostitution. I can't do that. I have a history of working in Thailand with women in prostitution. And so this hit a core. That's far from what I believe now. But when I first started reading about it, I was like, there's no way, this is immoral. I can't do this. While my Christian conditioning was still alive. But again, I hit desperation point after desperation point where I was like, I need to do something, this disconnection with my body. Like, I can't keep living like this. And I got desperate enough to go and see the sexual healer. And I will never forget the very first question that he asked me. He looked at me and he said, "Why are you here?" And in that moment, I was like, well, I really thought I was here to heal my relationship with my partner. I really thought I was here because I would love to have an orgasm at one point in my life. And I really thought I was here because I teach on embodiment, and this feels like one part of my life that I have complete lack of access. And I'm starting to feel like a hypocrite. So I thought I was here for all of these reasons. But really, all I can think about right now is that my bank account is close to zero. My business is flopping. All of my creativity is completely dried up. And somehow, right now, that feels connected to my sexuality. Am I crazy?
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, and he looked at me, and I can't even tell you what he told me in that moment, but I know that it was like the very beginning steps of what I know now to be my lived experience, which is that our sexual energy is life force. It's the spark of creation, it's what gives life, it's what makes me magnetic. And so if I am shutting down my sexual energy, then every other part of me is going to be shut down. Every other part of who I am is going to be affected. So I won't go into all the details of that session, but so I went into the session being like, there's no way. He worked specifically with G-spot stimulation and squirting. And I was like, I've never even orgasmed. There's no way I'm going to squirt. This just isn't happening. Wow, was I wrong? And I remember clearly he worked with this very clear, like, stop and go. So if I wanted him to work inside of my body, I would have to ask for it. And if I said stopped, he would be hands off and out, right? And so I remember the first few times I could feel the waters building in my body. And right before I was ready to release, every single time I screamed, "Stop!" And it was like something came through me that wasn't me, because then immediately afterwards I'd start bawling and just be like, I can't believe I said stop. I was so close. I was so close. And bless his heart, this guy had so much patience. He was like, it's okay. We're going to try again. You're safe. Everything's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And probably after screaming stop in his face 3 or 4 times, I finally let go and I finally released. And so much water came out of my body. And it wasn't ecstatic. It wasn't pleasureful. I wasn't like feeling my power. It was like a blood curdling scream ripping through my body, almost like as though had an ayahuasca purge coming out my yoni, and water and water and water and water and water and water
Wow.
and water. The whole bowl soaked. Yeah. And in that moment, I felt more energy running through my body than I knew was possible. And I just remember after that session laying on that table and feeling things that I had never felt before. And something in me was like, this is the most important thing that I've ever done. I'd done ayahuasca, I've done all kinds of self-transformational work, shadow work, vision quest, blah, whatever. And I was like, this is it. This is so important. This is vital.
Wow.
Mm. And then in the months that followed, in the slow season of my business, I made more money than I had ever made in my life. I sold out 2 back-to-back retreats, which that was something new for me at the time. And these retreats were more aligned to what felt like my real internal purpose than ever before. And so what I experienced was that when I tapped into my sexual energy and when I started harnessing that energy, that everything changed. My business flourished. I had more money. But more important than that, I was living more connected to my purpose and to my power than ever before. And that to me is sex magic. It's how our own erotic energy, our own erotic channel opens you to live more fully, to live more powerfully, to live more authentically yourself.
Yes. Beautiful. Wow, that sounds like a really profound experience. And you were working with this practitioner like multiple sessions?
I did. I worked with him for maybe about 6 months.
Uh-huh.
Not, and the pulse was like once a month or so,
Right.
but that whole story happened in one session.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you like
And
built up
because,
to it.
oh no, but that was the very first session. That was the very
Oh,
first time I went.
that was the very
That
first
all that
session. Wow.
very first session. And then
Amazing.
after that, I just threw myself all into sexual healing, jade
Yeah.
egg, oming, whatever I could get my hands on. I'm an all in kind of a girl. So I was like, this is amazing. I've discovered a secret. I'm going to do everything I can to get more of whatever this is, because this is more transformative than anything else I've done in my whole life.
Yes. Wow. What a transformation. Incredible.
Mm.
Wow. I love this story. Okay, so you had that experience, you like awakened to the power of sexual energy, your whole life kind of changed with like sold out retreats and more money and I'm imagining just more ease in every aspect of your life. So and what I heard you say is like that is the magic, like the transformation of waking up my sexual energy is the magic that changed my life. So let's
Mm.
dive into that. Like what does that mean? Like the magic, like sex magic. What does that mean? What does that look like? How are you now consciously and intentionally using this awakened sexual energy to continue creating the life that you really wanted?
Yeah, absolutely. So, sex magic. I feel like sometimes people just overcomplicate it, right? It's so easy, it's so simple. All it is taking your erotic energy and channeling it into your creations. So that can happen as easily as I'm self pleasuring or I'm with a partner. And as I'm feeling the erotic energy, I'm just like sending my prayers out, right? You can think of your pleasure, your eros as a carrier for your prayers. In a moment of orgasm, like setting an intention with where that's going to go. So it can be that simple.
Mm-hmm.
Sex magic can also be done without any quote unquote sex, because the sex in sex magic is really our life force, right? So I've even done practices where all I'm doing is moving energy through my body and feeling this expansive pleasure in my body without touching myself erotically, quote unquote, or on my genitals at all. And that still to me is sex magic. It's
Mm-hmm.
me tapping into life force and what feels good in my body and really using that as a carrier for my prayers, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And then if you want to get a little bit deeper into like, okay, but how does it work? you know?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, there is this magical thing of our pleasure. It's this vibration that feels good. When you merge that with your prayer, there's a magic in helping that to come into the physical plane, right? So there's the mystical element of it. But I really like to geek out on how science and mysticism combine and merge.
Yes, me
So quite
too.
often I'm doing, I know, it's like, oh, it's all the same thing, you guys. It's all the same thing. And it's so fun when science starts to back up all the things that we've always known anyways, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So so really what that looks like for me with sex magic is, and I guess this, I'll preface this by going a little bit deeper into what sex magic can look like, right? So oftentimes if I'm doing a specific sex magic practice, I'll choose a prayer or an intention of some sort. And then I'll bring myself with my pleasure to a place where that thing has already happened, whether it's a new relationship, a certain amount of money, something for my business, a home. Manifested lots of homes, lots of travel using sex magic, sold out retreats during sex magic, right? So I start to imagine as though I'm already there, that thing has already happened. And then what that's doing is that's actually changing me from the inside out. And here's the science behind it, is that when you, in a meditative state, experience something that is profound, your subconscious does not know the difference between it's actually happening in real life versus it's happening in a meditative state. And this is why ritual and things like that are so powerful for healing. You know, you can go back and heal old traumas by taking yourself back into a place and creating a different result. And it's because it's reprogramming your subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
So with sex magic, you're doing the exact same thing, except for you're reprogramming your mind to believe that, oh, I already have the dream home on Maui. That's one of the things that I'm praying for right now with my sex magic, right? The temple on Maui already exists. There it is. I can see it. I can smell it. I can touch it. I can taste it. I can feel it viscerally through my body. And this isn't just mindset work. It's not just something that lives in my mind. When I bring my whole body into it, when I bring my erotic energy and my pleasure into it, it's actually changing the reality in my body, in every single cell. I'm feeling it. I'm breathing it. I'm sounding it. I'm moving it. That new reality is coming alive in my body.
Yeah.
And once I start to believe that, not just in my mind, but through my body, I'm a different person. I make different choices. If I believe that that temple is already here, then I see the opportunities when they present themselves. They've probably always been there, but I'm more likely to see them now, right? I'm probably more courageous because the thing's already on its way. Why wouldn't I be bold? Why wouldn't I be brave, right? I'm more confident. It's like all of me shifts, and the decisions and the choices that I make and the actions that I take towards my vision becomes different. It's supercharged. And so because I'm taking those actions and I'm making those empowered choices, the thing happens. Magic, right? And so to me, that's really the real magic in sex magic, is not the thing that you get, not just the temple or the partnership or the this or that or whatever, but it's who you become as a result of your practice, how you shift and change because of what you choose to do. Yeah, that's the real magic. You become a person who is big enough not only to hold that vision, but to take that vision and bring it down here to this earth, to really like anchor it in grounded action.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, it's so beautiful. So just to highlight this key piece that you said, it's like about the person you become through the journey of practicing sex magic and how it changes us on a mind body level, what we believe is possible, what we open ourselves up to seeing, receiving, the opportunities that are there, the action that we take, like that is the magic. Yeah, really beautiful.
Well, and then the other part of it I find is that the more that it's like what you focus on grows, right? So if I'm focusing on pleasure in the body, my experience is that, and I've done this, right? I've done, I run what I call the Sex Magic Cauldron, where for a whole moon cycle, I'll gather a group of people and we commit to a daily sex magic practice every single day. And I'll do even just a 10-minute practice every single day. And what I found is that on the days that I really don't fucking feel like it and I don't want to do it, if I just start to lean into the pleasure, all of a sudden by the end of it, I'm just like fully feeling life moving through me. My entire day has shifted because of 10 minutes of me focusing on my pleasure. Because when we focus on it, it's like all of a sudden that thing grows, right? So when I say yes to my pleasure, more of it comes, and then more and more and more. And it might start in my physical body, but the more that I can experience pleasure in my physical body, it starts to like permeate out into my emotions, into my physical reality. Everything starts to shift, right? And so oftentimes I'll have clients that are like, oh, I didn't do sex magic this week because I didn't feel like it. And my response is always like, oh, but that's when it's the best,
Mm-hmm.
That's when it has the most transformative qualities. It's so easy to do sex magic on a day when you wake up feeling good and beautiful and powerful. It's like, yes. But on the days when you feel like shit, when your heart is breaking, imagine having a practice that can change your inner reality, that can take you from the brink of heartbreak to all of this hope and all of this prayer.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is what sex magic is. It actually transforms not only who you are, but your whole day, your experience.
Yeah, and that reminds me, I wanted to appreciate something you said earlier as well around, the sex magic is about connecting to our pleasure, which can look a lot of different ways, and you put erotic energy in quotation marks, where it's like our pleasure can be a sense of nourishment and sensuality and sweetness and tenderness and being with our emotions. And it doesn't have to be like horny arousal, like erotic energy. It can be.
Exactly.
So, like, and what you're speaking to now is like, okay, well, I don't feel like it, or, and this relates to, our relationships, where it's like, oh, I'm not in the mood to have sex, or, I'm not in the mood to self pleasure, where it's like, okay, we don't need to be in the mood in a sexual erotic way, but how can we invite and encourage ourselves to just actually take a moment of presence and be like, hey, I'm not in the mood for that, but like, what actually is here right now? Like, how am I feeling in this moment? And can I just choose to take a few minutes to be with myself, and what am I noticing? What am I feeling? And from there we can open into like, okay, maybe I just need nourishment. Maybe I need to feel my feelings, and like that is what starts the shift that we can sort of open into, like, okay, well, where do I feel okay right now in my body, and can I
Yes.
put some energy into more of what feels good and more of what I'm
Yes.
wanting.
Yeah. I love it, and I think the reason I put the erotic in quotations, because like everything is erotic, like me stroking my face, that's erotic. Me holding myself, that's erotic. It's
Yeah.
like life force is everywhere. And what I hear you talking about is almost like your pathway in, and I often talk about like find your easiest access point into pleasure. If all you can do is like hold yourself and breathe because your life is like so hard in that moment or something, that's the portal. And what often happens is I'll go into practice being like, okay, if I just cry and hold myself, that's enough. But once I do that, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, like I had a practice once where I was going through something, can't remember, but I was sitting at the ocean, and I just remember for the first minute just like crying, feeling horrible, you know. And within a few minutes, I like started to smile a little bit. I could feel my body moving a little bit more. And by the end of it, I was like in full ecstasy bliss, like all this life moving through me. But I didn't just skip to that part. I had to first cry and scream and rant for a little while and let myself feel that, and then like nurture myself for a little while. But the every single step just takes you just a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you spoke a little bit about earlier, like, running energy through the body and the awakening of sexual energy. And I'm curious if you want to go back a little bit to your personal experience of being pretty shut down, and like the
Mm.
imprint of your religious upbringing, teaching you that sexuality is bad and that you didn't orgasm until you were in your 20s, I think you've mentioned to me before. And I'm curious if you want to just
Yes.
touch a little bit on that, especially, speaking to people maybe that don't have orgasm or have never done sex magic or don't feel like they have an access point to pleasure and to be
Yeah.
able to utilize this life force energy for manifestation.
Yeah. Yeah. 1000%. So One of the disservices I feel that so many religions and philosophies have put onto our sexuality is this idea that it's separate from our spirituality, that it's something that takes you away from God, right? Like within Christianity, it's like, well, sex is bad all the way until you get married. And then it's like just for making babies, right? And so it's almost like putting it in this very small box where it's only appropriate under these conditions. And so my path has really been about reclaiming sexuality as a pathway to God, actually. It's a way that I connect with my own divinity. It's a way that I connect with that part of myself that is eternal, right? And so I remember being in a self pleasure ritual years ago, actually, where the big thing that I kept coming to is like, okay, self pleasure is how I meet God. Self pleasure is how I go to God. You know, rather than masturbation is like having sex with Satan. It's like self pleasure is how I make love to God. It's how I make love to the divine. And I think what I want to share with anybody who feels like they don't have access to this yet is that that's the key part, is that yet. I used to think that my sexual experience was what I was born with, and that was just it. Like I'm just doomed to a life of bad sex, if I could even do that, because most of the time I was so frozen that I couldn't even, it was uncomfortable and painful, right? And so there was a time when I believed, and there was a time when I was like, well, I guess that's my life now. And that's just what and I'm just going to be okay with that. And what I want to share is that our sexuality is like anything else. Just like anything else, the more that we put our mind to it, the more that we practice, the more that we lean into this energy, it grows and changes and shifts inside of you. Even like something as simple as, since I'm in a female body, like how wet your yoni gets, right? So a lot of women think like, oh, I just tend to be more dry, right? Well, there was a time when I was always dry. But then when I started working with my sexual energy, when I started working with the jade egg, for example, now I'm dripping wet all the time. And I say that just to let you know that every single part of your sexuality can change and shift if you want it to. You can have as much pleasure, as much wildness in your sexuality, as much primal energy, as much softness, gentleness, whatever it is that you're craving. It's attainable. It is open to you. And to me, pleasure has been like a deep, deep well. That the more that I dig in, it's like the more that there is, and it just keeps coming and coming and coming. And no pun intended. Oh, I guess I'm a little embarrassed. I
Cute.
always say dirty without meaning to, and later people are like, "Did you mean to say that?" I'm like, "No, I didn't." Anyhow, pleasure is this deep well, right? And what I always like to say is that if you're someone who's like, "I've got pleasure in spades, I feel so much, I'm multi-orgasmic, I feel so much in my body," my response to you is amazing. And there's more. There's more. I'm always so shocked by how much more there is
Mm.
for everyone, right?
Mhm.
And then if you're on the other complete spectrum of that and you're like, oh, I'm completely disconnected, I'm numb, I don't even know what pleasure is or how to, I don't even know what would feel good in my body. Maybe you feel unsafe in your body because of trauma or abuse, or maybe you just are numb and shut down like I was. And if that's you, what I want to say to you is I am living proof of going from being so numb, so shut down, so disconnected to feeling it all. Being multi orgasmic, feeling like waves of energy coming through me that more powerful than I could have ever dreamed. And it just keeps getting better. Every time that I'm like, oh, wow, that experience, that was like something new that I've never experienced before. And then the next week, something else happens and some other door opens up. And it's like our bodies are so mysterious
Mhm.
and our pleasure is infinite. It just, yeah, that ecstatic current, once you can access it and start to open it, it starts to rise and move through you. and oftentimes will surprise you with how much there is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. I'm curious. This is making me think about, if we can use sex magic to manifest and get more of what we want or become the person we want to be. Um, Kind of two questions. It's like, oh, so we could use sex magic to become more orgasmic, right? And
Yeah.
and I'm curious for you, just the personal. It sounds like for you, the turning point was like you just got so desperate that you went to find a body worker, like a sexological body worker, to support you. And I'm curious what
Yep.
other things you have done or you recommend for people that do feel numb or do feel shut down and don't feel like they have access to this energy.
Yeah, I love this question because this ties a lot with what I do for work, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And what I do for work is I teach people how to access this energy on their own, right? There's nothing against going to see a sexual healer. Obviously, it did me a whole world of good. I also tend to be an extreme sort of individual. So, like I said, when I do something, I go all in. I think that going to a sexual healer is something that is kind of like a calling, like really make sure that you're going to the right person, that you're really feeling the call, that kind of a thing. But what I find to be more empowering now is teaching people how to access this and open this for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you do, even within relationships, right? Sometimes I talk to women, they're like, oh my God, I have this new partner or this new lover, and I've never orgasmed in this way, or I've never had these experiences. And I can see that subtly in their mind, they're linking that person with that capacity, right? Oh, only when I'm with this person I orgasm, or only with I orgasm this way. Where really that person helped you access something that's already there, that you've always had, it lives in you. And so I feel that the most vital way really of accessing this energy is through your own self-pleasure, through your own connection to your body. And I want to be really clear that when I talk about self-pleasure, this isn't like some fantasy la la bypass where you're like, everything feels great and I'm just gonna like let everything feel great all the time, right? Like, no, that's not to be self-pleasure. To me, self-pleasure is recognizing and feeling whatever it is that's present and alive in your body. So oftentimes in my pleasure practices, and I'll get this a lot from my clients also, they'll be like, ooh, I think I did it wrong. During the sex magic ritual, I started crying and I'm supposed to be in a pleasure ritual. And I'm like, great, you did the right thing. Because here's the thing, sometimes pleasure, Usha, you earlier were talking about nourishment, right? Like sometimes pleasure creates enough nourishment and safety in the body so that you can feel what's actually happening.
Yeah.
So I have self-pleasure rituals where I'm crying most of the time,
Yeah.
right? I have self-pleasure rituals where rage comes through.
Mm-hmm.
That's all welcome. So when I talk about focusing on self-pleasure to open these portals, it's not just about letting yourself feel good all the time, but it's about inviting in things that feel good and then letting that open the doorway to whatever needs to be felt, whatever needs to be expressed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then there's, of course, like more specific things, you can do things like de-armoring. For women, I teach a course on yoni de-armoring or with working with something like the jade egg. Those are more practical tools for those in female buddies. And then even in male buddies, you can do de-armoring also. But, there's other things that you can do on top of it, but really start with self-pleasure. Start with just getting to know your body
Mm-hmm.
and listen to it because it knows what it needs, It knows what you need to heal. It knows how it wants to move. It knows how it wants to be touched. And if you are someone like how I was, where you're really numb and disconnected, it might take a while before you're able to really hear the voice of your body,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Beginning, you might not feel a lot. In the beginning, you might do entire practices and be like, am I doing it right? Like, I don't know. But again, it's like the more that we practice listening, that's the other thing is for me, self-pleasure. Okay, sorry, so many things to talk about. So many things I get excited about. But I just want to differentiate that when I talk about self-pleasure, to me, it's different than masturbation. It's kind of just a terminology thing, but also often when you think of masturbation, it's like lots of genital touch and in the way that you know how to orgasm the fastest. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. But for me, self pleasure is about listening to what the body wants now. Maybe the body doesn't want to orgasm now. Maybe the body doesn't even want you to touch yourself genitally right now. And one thing that I will just like slide in here right now is that it's quite often for both female and male bodies, the person that crosses your boundary the most is yourself, right? You push your body to have an experience because you need to come or you feel like that's what you want when your body's not ready for it. And so self-pleasure first and foremost is listening for what does it need right now?
Mm-hmm.
What's the thing that's going to give you pleasure right now, completely separate of orgasm, completely separate from ejaculation. Those things can happen, they're welcome, but that's not the goal, right? I feel like I switched course halfway through a point. I don't know if I left something undone, but
Well, I'm following right along and I'm loving everything you're sharing, and it's like so much of what I teach as well, and it's like very affirming just how much alignment there is of, yeah, this
of
perspective,
course there is because we love each
and
other.
really like making that distinction of, masturbation is often so routine and goal oriented, and self pleasure is really like what is here right now, and being present to the truth of the moment and our authenticity. And
Hmm.
yeah, like again, like that's where the magic is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were talking about, the question of what are the recommendations and what has been your journey of going from numb to pleasureful, and
Hmm.
um, and so much of that is about really knowing ourselves. It's like, yeah, we want to get the support of teachers and guides and healers and body workers, and they can direct us and give us practices and support us to know ourselves better. And really it's like
Hmm.
like we have our own personal relationship with our own sexuality first and foremost. And how can
Hmm.
I like really know my body and what my body needs and how my body responds and what my body likes. And the more comfortable and confident I safe I feel in my body, the more confident and comfortable and safe I can feel when I want to explore with others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that
Mm.
actually kind of reminded me, I wanted to really specifically name about sex magic is, um I know oftentimes I'm teaching sex magic, and it's sex magic as a solo practice and a self pleasure
Hmm.
practice. And I just wanted to
Hmm.
specifically name the distinction of like sex magic can be done so many ways. And you spoke to that a little bit where, it's like not like you don't even have to touch your genitals, right? To have sex magic. It's the life force energy. Um, and so much of what I think we both teach is more of like self pleasure sex magic. And I just wanted to name and invite you to just touch on, what does sex magic look like with another or with multiples or as like a group ritual?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I love this space also. So fun. So I'll talk about what it looks like with a partner or with partners, right?
Hmm.
So what's really beautiful in that space is you can intentionally go into a lovemaking session where you speak about your intentions ahead of time, what it is that you're praying for. And then again, it's like as you're making love or as you're engaging in some way, you're doing the same thing you would do when you're doing on your own, which is taking yourself to that future reality when that thing has already happened, right? When that temple is already here. And then if there is a moment of orgasm for one or both of you, maybe even at the same time, you would just be sending out that prayer, and again, there's no right or wrong way to do this. It's very simple. Oftentimes, if I'm with a beloved that we're in that flow, I'll just start to speak it out loud. In that moment of orgasm, like, oh, prayers for this or prayers for that. Quite often I'll do this at an ISTA training where it's like, oh, prayers for the field and for the participants coming in tomorrow. It's like, we're just like setting the energy with our own arrows first, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it can look like with a partner or partners, depending on, if you can do this with 3 people, with 4 people. And in a group field, which I love to do, I love leading group rituals because when you're in a group field, it's like each person is bringing their own medicine. And it's almost like we're creating this vortex of energy. So, like, as one person has an opening, as one person feels a rush of ecstasy, it's like it gets to infuse the whole group with that energy, right? The group mind, the group experience is so real. And I've experienced this both in person and also online. I've led group rituals in both ways, both in person and online.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love about it is that you're not only praying for your own prayers, but you're praying for the prayers of every other person in the room, every other person in the space.
Yes.
So that it's like you're magnifying it. You're creating this cauldron where you're all adding your own medicine, your own juice, your power. And I find that when you do this in a group, there's momentum and there's like a magnification that happens because you're not doing it on your own, because you're doing it with a group.
Yes. Beautiful. Thank you for adding that in. I think it's an important piece to speak to because it is such a beautiful practice and there's so many ways we can explore it. And I want to just highlight again how simple it can be. And also for me, it's so much of wedding the spiritual with the sexual. I do this almost every time I make love with a beloved or a lover. Where it's like you can just take a moment to be like, what is our intention? What are we praying for? So that all of this juicy sexual energy we're cultivating together, we can send it out as a prayer so that all beings are benefiting from our lovemaking.
Yeah, that's right. What a gift.
And I want to just add, because some people don't necessarily orgasm in this, way that we think of orgasm being this like explosive thing, that for me, it's also like just in the like heightened state of pleasure or arousal or connection, because sex is about like a lot of the times for me, it's like connection with the divine and coming into oneness, whether it's with myself or another, like a oneness with the whole, a oneness with the universe, with the divine, with spirit. And when we have that intention, it just makes it even more powerful in that way. And yeah, there can be such a simplicity to it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like it's
Absolutely.
not just the orgasm, but it's like whenever we're in that state to, like, that is when we send the prayers and have the vision and hold the intention.
Exactly. Yeah. Beautiful.
Oh, I love this topic. So I, I, I think it might be possible if you're willing to give us like a mini transmission of what it is to access this life force energy and use it for manifestation and just give us a little embodied experience of that before we complete our interview today.
I would love to. That's so fun.
Yes. Great.
Okay. So you can do this exactly where you are. Clothed, not clothed, however you are right now is just fine. You can close your eyes. Start by taking a deep breath into your body. And then as you exhale, give it a little sound. One more breath. All the way down to your sex this time. And just seated as you are, see if you can feel someplace in your body that feels good, that feels pleasure. And I want you to take a breath into that little bit of feeling good, wherever it is. And on the inhale, you're going to breathe into it. And then on the exhale, you're going to feel that good feeling expanding through your body. Yeah? And keep doing that at your own pace. And if you'd like, you can add in some touch. Meeting your body with your hands as though you're meeting your lover. Feeling for what feels good in the body right now. And every time you find a spot that feels good, you can lean into it. And every time that you breathe out, you can start to sound your pleasure. So that with every single inhale, you breathe into the place in your body that feels good. With every single exhale, you let that come out through sound. And you start to let that energy build and grow inside of you. And on the next breath, you're going to breathe in all of this delicious energy. And then you're going to hold the breath. And you're going to hold the breath for as long as you can. And you're going to let that pleasure build and circulate and move through your body. And then when you cannot hold it anymore, you can exhale and sound, sending that energy out into the world. And you can imagine as though all of this delicious energy that you cultivated is going to wherever it's the most needed. Maybe you see someone's face or something that's happening in the world. You can just send out your pleasure to wherever it wants to go right now. Taking one last slow, juicy breath into the body. Feeling yourself nourished and enlivened by your own erotic energy. A slow exhale out as you ground this vibration of pleasure deep into your cells and into your body. And when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes.
So yummy. That's
Yeah.
such a beautiful example for us to witness and experience how in just under 5 minutes we had our own mini little pleasure ritual, sending our good vibes out into the universe to benefit someone or
Yeah.
something, or even just ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to encourage everyone to just take a moment to feel, what do you feel in your body right now? How has it changed in those 5 minutes? What's come alive? You know, I know for myself, I feel a little bit in this blissy state. And I feel like I see it on Usha's face.
Yeah, that felt super nourishing and yummy, and I feel my energy has really shifted from the beginning. At the beginning of this call, I was, mentioned before we started recording, feeling a little crunchy. Right now, I'm just like, feeling much more relaxed and inspired and present in my body and yummy in my cells. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
It has been such a pleasure talking about sex magic and hearing a bit about your personal journey with this work. And we want to hear a little bit about what you're doing in the world and how our listeners can access you and get more information about you. And before I have you share about your offerings and your website, I'm going to ask you 4 quick fire questions to give us just a more unique glimpse into Aya Kamānakai.
Sounds good.
Question number 1. What have you done for the first time recently? First time ever.
Ooh, for the first time ever. I went to Chichen Itza for the first time and visited like ancient pyramids of the Mayan people.
Beautiful. In Mexico, the Yucatan, right?
In the Yucatan, yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Number 2, what is something you always take on a retreat with you?
My blood. My moon blood. I always have a vial of blood. Ooh, and I have a little bear. Her name's Aya Bear. If she were closer, I'd bring her. She comes with me everywhere.
Oh, that's cute. I don't think I knew that. Oh,
really?
I mean, I know I've always
seen
you having your blood with you, and I'm sure I've met your bear, but I don't remember her.
Next training.
Cute. All right, number 3. What is your favorite dessert?
Dessert. Creme brulee.
Ooh, good to know. Did not know that about you.
Yeah.
And
I don't eat it often, but when I'm there, I'm stoked.
Yeah, it's a rare dessert to have around.
Exactly.
And our final question, if you didn't know anything about the temple arts and you weren't in this field of sacred sexuality, what do you think you would be doing instead?
Oh, wow. Well, I wanted to be a teacher at one point. Maybe I would be doing that. I, although to be honest, when I came home from being a missionary in Thailand, it was so difficult for me to come home that I was just a waitress. So maybe I would still be a waitress.
Oh, cute. Still in a service to humanity, either way.
There you go. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. Tell us, where can we find you in the world and on the web, and tell us a little bit about your offerings, and we'll send everyone off.
Okay, amazing. So you can find me at ayakamanakai.com, AYA, like papaya. Kamanakai is Kamanakai. For those of you who have connection to Hawaii, Kamanakai, it's the mana of the ocean. It's a name that I received from my kumu. So that's both my Instagram handle as well as my website. And I do a number of retreats. Well, of course, you can find me at ISTA trainings, future ISTA trainings. That's first and foremost. But I also run my own retreats as well as do a variety of online courses that you can find. One on sex magic, one all about squirting, one all about de-armoring, one all about the jade eggs. So I do all things related to our sexual energy, our pleasure, the blood mysteries, like really connecting with spiritual, sexual, and shamanic realms. All of those things are very alive in my work. So, yeah, you can find me online somehow.
Yeah.
Find me.
Yeah. Or come find you in person at a retreat somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, even more fun.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm looking forward to when we get our bodies together again.
Yes, me too. Thank you, Usha.
Yeah, thank you, Aya. Bye.